Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. I know today's video is a little bit later than usual as I have been dealing with some personal things today, but there's still plenty of things happening across the game industry, so I decided to go ahead and put together a video anyways, and yes, this does include Microsoft reviving an interesting device. Wasn't really expecting this one, but we will talk about that one, as well as Nintendo combating Joy-Con drift. Yeah, stick drift has been a big problem for the Nintendo Switch this generation, but it does look like they are trying to fix that up, so we will talk about that one as well. To start this video off, though, we're going to be talking about that Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. This is something that we have talked a lot about here in the last couple weeks, as more and more information has continuously leaked out when it comes to this game. And well, actually today, Rockstar went ahead and decided to just go ahead and announce it themselves. I imagine that's probably because so much information leaked out when it comes to these games. They went in and decided, yeah, we might as well just go ahead and officially announce them. But yes, this does include Grand Theft Auto Vice City, San Andreas, as well as Grand Theft Auto 3. So you're going to get the complete trilogy here, though unfortunately, we haven't seen gameplay just yet. So there's still some questions about this game and just how much it's actually going to improve compared to the originals. Now, in their statement today, they did say that it will feature across-the-board upgrades, including graphical improvements and modern gameplay enhancements for all three titles, while still maintaining the classic look and feel of the originals. So based off that information, at least when it comes to the artistic direction, it's not going to probably look massively different compared to the originals. Though I still do wonder just how much of an upgrade we're talking about here. One of the leaks did mention that these games are running on Unreal Engine, so I'm still very interested to just see how much of an upgrade we actually get when it comes to this trilogy. Nonetheless, though, these are some of the most praised games of all time. To see all three of these games come out in the year of 2021, it really is a nice little collection here. Now, as for the release date and what platforms, though, unfortunately, we don't have a release date just yet, but I do expect that to be officially announced in the coming weeks. The rumor right now is for November. So we'll kind of keep an eye out on that, but you know, the good news here is that these games will essentially release on every major platform. It's going to be coming to the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch, and also PC. So regardless of where you play, you're going to be able to play these games, and it really is awesome, especially to see this game come over to the Nintendo Switch. That's the one that's probably the most surprising here, and the fact that you can play Grand Theft Auto on a mobile console like the Nintendo Switch, it really is just amazing. Next up, though, let's talk about PlayStation, as apparently a big remake is in development and might be announced relatively soon. Now, this leak is coming from a very interesting source. Apparently, this is coming from a recent interview with an Irish musician named Ava. According to her, she was contacted about a year ago to work on a big PlayStation remake. And actually, let's just go and check out what she had to say. Michael McGlynn got in touch and just said, "Listen, we're writing music for a remake of a PlayStation game, and he's done that a lot. He's done a lot of writing for different games that are very well known, but I'm actually not a gamer myself. So really what I was involved with was the lyric writing in the Irish language, and his daughter sang on the track and his wife arranged part of the choral parts, and so did Michael. And he also worked with me on the language side of things, so it was almost like a family effort. For ages, I wasn't allowed to really. You don't know what you're writing for. It's all kind of undisclosed because they don't want it to get out. So it's actually going to be named at Christmas, the name of the game. I have heard of it now, and I have confirmed it is a big game, which is great. It's going to be an Irish language piece in the game, which is brilliant." So that was quite a lengthy explanation there of what exactly is happening here, but according to her, yes, they are working on a big remake. Not only has she worked on composing music for this game, but apparently she also went back and confirmed herself that whatever this game is a big game. Now, beyond that though, I mean, what could this remake possibly be? And that is the big question. Interestingly enough though, there is some speculation that this game could possibly be Xenogears, and well, that actually would be quite big because this is well known as being one of the best JRPGs of all time. If they could somehow remake that game and give it the Final Fantasy VII treatment, that would be absolutely massive. And well, we do know that Square Enix and Sony, they do have a history of working together. They did do the Final Fantasy VII remake together, so so maybe they would consider doing that once again with Xenogears. Now, the reason this is actually being speculated at all that it could possibly be Xenogears is because, as VGC pointed out, Yasunori Matsuda, a composer who worked for the Chrono, Xeno, and Shadow Hearts franchises, tweeted a photo last week of McGlenn and his daughter preparing to perform music remotely. So this part of the story does kind of add up to what Ava said, and if you put two and two together, maybe they are working on one of the franchises that Yasunori Matsuda has worked on in the past. Though if I'm going to choose a game that he's worked on in the past, I'd probably go with Chrono Trigger myself. I mean, if they do a Chrono Trigger remake, you want to talk about massive. It's pretty common for Chrono Trigger to top the list of just all time being one of the best JRPGs ever made. So if any game really deserves a remake, that's the one that I would probably go with. But if they do Xenogears, I'd be more than happy with that as well. Keep in mind, though, that all of this is just rumors and speculation for the time being, though. But she does say that this game will be announced at Christmas, and if I were to guess, that's probably going to be the Game Awards. The Game Awards does take place on December 9th, and if this game does get announced this Christmas, I imagine whatever it is will probably be announced there. Now, also in a new unexpected turn of events, Microsoft actually revived the infamous Xbox device being Kinect. Yes, Kinect is officially back, but this time not for Xbox consoles, but instead for TVs. Now, this is probably actually much more fitting, which we'll get back to here in just a moment. But yes, Sky and Microsoft decided to work together to resurrect Kinect for Sky's new all-in-one TVs. And yes, this will actually also include video games. So, I mean, yes, Kinect is back in full force this time, but I think it is in a much more fitting place. Now, I bought the Xbox One day one last generation, but if you were around during 2013 and you were into Xbox or gaming as a whole, you probably know just how hated this device was. And really, it's not necessarily the Kinect's fault. I think Kinect was a pretty good device for what it was, but it was better used as an application to control your TV than it was for video games. Motion controls was just this big, huge phenomenon during the Nintendo Wii days. The Wiimote was just absolutely massive, and yes, Sony and Microsoft, they tried to incorporate their own motion controls, and Sony went in the direction with the Wiimote. They had PlayStation Move, and then Microsoft went the direction with Kinect, where you wouldn't even have to use a controller. The original Kinect for the Xbox 360 was actually one of the best-selling peripherals of all time. But the motion control hype just kind of died down real quick as we headed into that generation with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And the big problem was that Microsoft just tried to shoehorn this device onto the Xbox One. This device wasn't sold separately, but it just came included, which just kind of skyrocketed the price from $400 to $500. And that was a big problem for a lot of gamers. A lot of people just didn't want Kinect, whether it be because they don't like motion controls. And there was also this big concern back then with the camera spying on you. So there was some issues with Kinect coming bundled with the Xbox One. It was one of the major reasons that the Xbox One initially struggled. Though the thing about this device, and like I said before, it does actually have some uses. It was great for just overall media. You just kind of walk into the room and you say Xbox on, Xbox off, Xbox, go to Netflix, and all this other stuff. You can do all this without the remote, and you can just you can be cooking in your kitchen, you say all this stuff, and it gets it set up for you. It really worked well in that aspect, and even when it came to more simplistic or casual games, it worked well for those, whether that be something like Just Dance. I do think that it was probably the best option to play things like Just Dance. But in terms of hardcore games, it really struggled incorporating hardcore games into motion controls. Motion controls in general just has that problem. But I mean, there was a few games like Kinect Rivals. That was a pretty decent one with the wave racing. Rare did a pretty good job with that, I thought. But yeah, overall, Kinect just wasn't really a hardcore gaming device. So I do think Kinect is a better fit when it comes to TVs. And I am kind of glad to see it come back. I mean, it can be a pretty convenient device, and they are actually keeping that gameplay aspect aspect to it as well. They did say that it can play some games such as Fruit Ninja. Now, I mean, we're probably not going to see any kind of hardcore games come to this device anytime soon. I mean, they tried this in the past, and some of the best developers in the world tried this. But in general, games like Fruit Ninja, that works really well on a device like Kinect. And yeah, Kinect is back with games and all. Let me know in the comments below, though, on whether you actually liked Kinect for the original Xbox One. I'm not personally big into motion controls, but I mean, some of you all out there are. And yeah, let me know in the comments below on what you thought about Kinect if you did own one in the past. Now, we also got some new information about the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con stick drift. This has been a major problem since the Nintendo Switch first launched. Much of the community has reported issues with their Joy-Con controllers and the infamous stick drift. I myself have experienced stick drift for Switch controllers in the past, and so yes, I do know this is a very, very real problem. It's actually even gotten to the point that a class action lawsuit has been filed against Nintendo because of this very problem. But the thing about this is that Nintendo, they never really publicly talk about stick drift. And well, there's definitely a reason for that. You know, they are dealing with this class action lawsuit and they don't want to talk about it publicly. They don't want to incriminate themselves, but they actually kind of broke that silence today with the Nintendo Switch OLED. As they were talking about some of the improvements with the Nintendo Switch OLED, they had a very interesting statement, and yeah, let's just go and check this out. Joy-Con controllers have a lot of different features, so we've been continuing to make improvements that may not always be visible. Among others, the analog stick parts have continuously been improved since launch, and we are still working on improvements. The parts of the Joy-Con analog sticks are not something that can be bought off the shelf, but are specially designed, so we have undergone a lot of consideration to improve them. In addition, we improved the reliability test itself, and we have continued to make changes to improve durability and clear this new test. When the effects of our improvements were confirmed, we promptly incorporated them into the Joy-Con controllers that are included with the console, Nintendo Switch Lite, and the ones sold individually that were manufactured at that time. This involves the internal components of the Joy-Con, so you can't tell the improvements from the outside, but we use the new versions of the parts when we repair them. Also, similar continual improvements have been made for the Nintendo Switch Pro controller as well. So there you have it. It's very clear from this statement that Nintendo has been trying to combat Joy-Con stick drift. Now, they don't specifically mention stick drift here, but when they talk about durability and the analog sticks in specific, that's what they're talking about. They're trying to fix this problem internally and discreetly, so we're never really going to get an official announcement for this, but it is really nice to hear that they have been working to fix that problem. But now that they've actually said this, I would be very curious to know the failure rates for these new Joy-Cons or with the Switch Lite compared to that original Nintendo Switch model. Now, I will say for myself, I do have several Joy-Cons, and the only one that does have stick drift was actually from that original Nintendo Switch. So I do wonder if that's because they did make some improvements with some of the newer Joy-Cons on the market. At the same time, though, I mean, I've seen several reports of newer Joy-Cons having issues as well, and I really don't think that there's ever going to be a time where they just completely fix this problem. I think it's going to be an ongoing issue, even if it's less compared to that original Nintendo Switch. And I think that's really kind of the overlaying problem here. I don't know if anybody's ever going to trust the Joy-Cons again. I mean, the Nintendo Switch is such a hot device, and it's not going to keep people from buying the Nintendo Switch per se, but everybody's going to kind of always worry about the durability when it comes to these consoles because of those Joy-Cons, regardless if they're working on fixing it or not. Nonetheless, though, it is really nice to see Nintendo finally talk about the durability of these controllers, and it's nice to hear that they are indeed working on fixing them, or actually, maybe they've already made some progress when it comes to that. Let's go ahead and talk about the poll of the day, though. We did talk about Grounded yesterday, which is an early access game, and it's going to be adding a pretty significant update later this month that's going to turn it into a legitimate RPG. It's actually looking really good right now, but in the comments, some of you all did say that you try to stay away from early access games. So it got me to thinking, how many of you actually purchase early access games? So I thought I'd go ahead and ask you all, do you ever purchase games like this? And well, 28% of you said yes, while 67% of you said no. So it seems like most of you all just try to stay away from early access games when possible. And you know what? I do actually understand that. I myself typically stay away from early access games and just kind of wait it off until they fully release. And part of that is because, you know, these games, they do have issues. And then another part of it is I already have enough games to play as it is. So I don't really mind waiting until we get a full release. But every once in a while, I mean, we do get some really good early access games. A lot of people are, in fact, enjoying Grounded quite a bit. Hades, that was a great early access game for a long time. And, you know, we have some other ones. A lot of you all did mention games like Baldur's Gate and Dead Cells. And yeah, I mean, there's some really good games that comes from early access. They can get some feedback from the community, and if they use that in a proper way, then they can really make these into fantastic games when they do fully release. That's kind of the whole point when it comes to early access. You actually help make these games better as they continue developing on such games. It really just becomes whether the player is patient enough to just kind of deal with some of the problems, because, you know, these early access games, they do have some rough spots when they do first come out, and if you're not willing to play games like this, then yeah, you probably should just go and steer clear when it comes to early access games. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.